The sky over the Pacific shimmered with unnatural light, like a mirror breaking in slow motion. People across the world paused, some holding their breath, some reaching for their phones as something massive appeared in the upper atmosphere. It wasn't a ship, not in the way humans imagine spacecraft. It was more like a living fortress, shaped like a deep-sea creature, covered in pulsing lights and long, flowing fins that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. News channels struggled to describe it. Social media lit up with theories, fear, and fascination. But within hours, more of these Leviathan-like ships emerged from clouds above oceans around the world. They didn't land. They didn't fire weapons at cities. Instead, they descended into the seas. It was then humanity learned who these aliens were. They called themselves the Thalzor Dominion, an ancient race of aquatic beings who traveled between water worlds. They did not see Earth as inhabited, they saw it as unclaimed. To them, land was irrelevant. They didn't even acknowledge humanity's presence on the continents. Their interests lay solely in the oceans, the 70% of Earth they believed had no owner, no protector, no challenge. Without warning, they deployed living ships that slid into the water with elegance and menace. Great whirlpools appeared near coastal regions. Fishing vessels disappeared. Naval submarines reported strange sonar readings and were never heard from again. Entire coral reefs turned black overnight as alien technology began changing the ocean's chemistry. Within 3 days, all contact with the deep-sea listening posts was lost. The world's governments held emergency meetings, but nobody had answers. The aliens ignored every attempt at communication. They broadcast a single message in a universal tone: the oceans of this planet are now under the protection and ownership of the Thalzor Dominion. Surface dwellers will not be harmed, unless interference occurs. At first, humanity felt helpless. What use were tanks or fighter jets against creatures that never came near the surface? But not everyone believed the oceans were lost. In hidden places, old naval bunkers, deep-sea research stations, black-site labs, plans began to move. There were people who understood the sea, not just as water, but as battlefield, as mystery, as home. A secret group within the United Nations reactivated an old off-the-books program called Leviathan Division, a coalition of elite submariners, scientists, and underwater warfare specialists, trained for threats never meant to be public. Captain Elena Voss, one of the youngest commanders in deep-sea operations, received the call while diving near the Tonga Trench. She surfaced to a world that had just changed. As she stepped aboard the black-painted sub waiting for her, she stared at the horizon, where the water shimmered like liquid metal and distant lights danced below the waves. The aliens believed the oceans were empty, unchallenged, free for the taking. But they forgot something that lived in silence, in pressure, in the crushing cold. Something that didn't welcome invaders. The oceans were never unclaimed. And humanity was about to remind them who really ruled the depths. Beneath the dark waves of the Atlantic Ocean, where sunlight could never reach, something moved in silence. While the world's eyes were still focused on the skies and the strange ships that had vanished into the sea, a different kind of war was already beginning far below. The Thalzor Dominion had claimed the oceans as if they were empty, expecting no resistance in the deep, but they didn't know that humanity had been preparing for the unknown for years. In the secret corners of the world, in hidden trenches and beneath Arctic ice shelves, Leviathan Division was awakening. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were experts trained for the impossible, a mix of deep-sea engineers, ex-Navy commanders, marine biologists, and rogue tech geniuses, people who had disappeared from the world above but had never stopped watching the sea. Their submarines weren't the kind seen on television. These were black water vessels equipped with stealth cloaks, pulse-quiet engines, and magnetic camouflage designed to slip through the ocean unnoticed. Their mission was simple: observe, strike, and disappear. Captain Elena Voss now led this force, and she stood at the command center of a submersible called the Sable, watching sonar scans that revealed terrifying patterns. Alien drones shaped like spiraling eels moved through the water in organized patrols, releasing strange chemicals and building structures along the ocean floor. These weren't just scouts, they were colonizers. And yet, the Thalzor remained blind to human presence. They thought no species could survive in such darkness and pressure. That arrogance was their first mistake. Voss issued silent orders, and the hunt began. One by one, Leviathan teams spread through the underwater trenches like shadows, laying traps made from smart coral and sonic disruptors that mimicked whale calls to confuse alien sensors. In the Indian Ocean, a silent ambush took out an alien drone that was scanning hydrothermal vents. It exploded without sound, sending pieces spiraling through black water. In the South Pacific, a disguised research sub hacked into a Thalzor communication relay using sound wave interference. Slowly, a picture began to form, a map of the alien network beneath the seas, vast and growing. But there was more. Strange signals were being picked up, not from the aliens, but from the ocean itself. Rhythmic pulses, deep and ancient, like heartbeat echoes coming from the deepest trenches, places no human had ever dared to explore. Some believed it was the ocean reacting to the invasion. Others thought it was something alive, something old. Voss reviewed the data in silence, her face lit only by the pale green light of the monitors. She didn't speak much, but her mind was sharp. She knew that whatever was out there, it was watching. One of her teams, stationed near the Mariana Trench, reported a near collision with a massive shadow larger than a blue whale, faster than any known creature, yet completely silent. The Thalzor seemed to avoid that area, as if afraid of it. That's when Voss made a decision. She would take the Sable into the trench. If something was hiding there, human or not, it needed to be found. As the submarine descended into the crushing black, all lights dimmed, and only the hum of life support systems remained. Pressure outside the hull could crush steel, but the crew was calm, trained for moments like this. Suddenly, the sonar went wild. There was movement all around them, but no clear shape. Then, silence. Complete silence. And in that silence, they saw it just for a moment. A giant eye, glowing faintly with bioluminescent light, larger than the viewport itself, staring into the sub before disappearing into the dark. Nobody spoke, but they all felt it. Whatever lived down here was not asleep. And perhaps, just perhaps, it had been waiting. The Thalzor thought they were the only predators in the ocean. But in the cold and crushing depths of Earth, ancient forces stirred, and humanity, fragile on the surface, had become deadly hunters below. The silent war had begun, and the deep was no longer quiet. The trench was silent again, but it was not empty. As the Sable slowly rose from the edge of the Mariana Trench, Captain Elena Voss remained still, replaying the moment she saw the glowing eye in the dark, an eye that seemed ancient, intelligent, and unafraid. The crew had no answers, only questions that pulsed like sonar in their minds. Back at Leviathan Division's hidden base, the data from the trench was analyzed in silence patterns in the sonar, low-frequency signals that formed shapes when mapped on a spectrograph. One scientist whispered what they all feared. The patterns were a language. Not alien. Not Thalzor. Something older. Something earthborn. The signals weren't just noise, they were responses. Something deep beneath the ocean had heard the intruders, and it was speaking back. But to whom? That night, across the oceanic zones where Leviathan teams operated, strange things began to happen. A Thalzor harvesting drone was found torn in half, not by weapons, but by immense claws. Entire clusters of alien machinery disappeared from the ocean floor overnight, with no signs of struggle, only deep gouges in the rock and disturbed currents. The Thalzor, once fearless in their advance, began avoiding deeper regions, instead clinging to shallower shelves and warmer waters. This behavior change was not human strategy, it was fear. They had seen something. A new silence took hold beneath the waves, but it was different now. It wasn't the silence of hiding, but the silence before a storm. Captain Voss received a transmission from an old contact, a deep-sea researcher named Dr. Una Kale, thought to be lost years ago in a dive gone wrong. Her signal came from an abandoned oceanic observatory that had somehow reactivated itself. Voss took a stealth sub to investigate. Inside, she found Kal alive, barely, but changed. The doctor spoke of a discovery, a being beyond science, a guardian or perhaps a weapon, hidden in the ocean's deepest fault lines. She called it the Abyssal King. According to Kale, it had been resting for millennia, woken only when balance in the ocean was broken by forces not of Earth. It communicated through pressure waves and sound, its presence more felt than seen. But it had seen humans not as prey, not as enemies, but as watchers, beings that respected the deep by staying away from it. And now, it had chosen to act. Voss knew then that humanity was not fighting alone. Something older and far more powerful had risen not for humanity, not for war, but to protect the natural order of the sea. The next few days confirmed it. Thalzor fleets began to suffer heavy losses, not from human attacks, but from unknown forces. Leviathan drones captured short bursts of footage, massive tentacles coiling around alien ships, shadows larger than oil rigs sliding through the water, and light patterns that caused Thalzor biomachines to malfunction. These were not tricks. These were warnings. And every sonar station, every deep-sea sensor, every submarine and vessel in the oceans began receiving the same pulse again and again, a rhythm like a slow heartbeat, growing stronger each day. Voss stood before her crew and told them the truth. Humanity was no longer alone in this fight, but the ocean's guardian wouldn't protect them forever. It didn't serve anyone. It served the deep itself. If the humans proved reckless, they too would face the same fate as the invaders. With this understanding, Operation Abyss Alliance was born, a temporary bond between humanity and the unknown power that ruled the trench. The Leviathan Division would coordinate its strikes with the creature's movements, drawing the Thalzor into deeper waters where they would be judged by the sea itself. As the first mission launched under this new alliance, Voss looked through the window of her submarine and saw glowing lights far below lines, circles, and shapes that moved like language. The Abyssal King was speaking again. Not in anger, but in command. Echoes from the deep had become more than noise. They had become a voice, a warning, a choice. And in the cold, crushing dark of Earth's last frontier, humanity answered. The war had changed. What began as a silent invasion had now turned into a full-scale underwater conflict, unlike anything the world had ever seen. The Thalzor, once confident in their power, had realized too late that Earth's oceans were not the quiet, empty territories they had assumed. Their machines were strong, their technology advanced, but the oceans were not their home, and they had no understanding of the forces they had disturbed. As they tried to push deeper, their ships cracked under pressure, their drones lost signal, and strange creatures began to attack them from the shadows, creatures the Thalzor couldn't classify, that didn't exist in their records, but that moved with purpose and rage. Captain Elena Voss, now leading the entire Leviathan Division, knew this was humanity's only chance. With the help of the Abyssal King and its ancient awareness of the ocean's hidden paths, she planned a massive ambush in one of the most dangerous and least explored regions on Earth, the Java Trench. It was the perfect trap. The trench was deep, unstable, and full of hydrothermal vents that released boiling streams of black smoke, perfect for hiding movement and distorting alien sensors. Leviathan submarines moved in silence, using sound pulses and coded vibrations to communicate in the deep. They laid mines made from bioluminescent jellyfish, DNA that could latch onto alien hulls without being noticed. They deployed manta-shaped drones with wings that mimicked ocean currents, slipping beneath the Thalzor fleets unnoticed. Above them, the aliens launched Operation Coral Flame, a massive effort to burn the oceans clean by altering water temperature and flooding the deep sea with energy pulses meant to force everything to the surface. But they underestimated how adaptable humans could be when cornered. Voss gave the order, and the deep exploded into chaos. Hidden torpedoes struck alien engines. Pressure-triggered mines shattered the hulls of living ships. The Abyssal King emerged from them, trenched like a mountain coming alive, its body glowing with patterns that disrupted the Thalzor's communication. Entire sections of the enemy fleet collapsed into the abyss, unable to escape the crushing force of the deep. Meanwhile, human subs danced between the chaos, striking and vanishing like hunters in fog. The ocean had become their battlefield and now their weapon. Some Thalzor vessels tried to rise back to the surface, but were stopped by swarms of deep-sea creatures responding to the Abyssal King's call. No one on the human side fully understood how, but the ocean itself had joined the war. Creatures long thought extinct moved with intention. Coral reefs reformed to block escape paths, and even the currents seemed to shift with unnatural timing, steering enemies into traps. In one final move, Voss directed her team to a narrow ridge near the trench wall. From there, they released a sonic pulse, enhanced by the king's power, that caused a chain reaction and underwater landslide that buried half the remaining Thalzor fleet in stone and mud. The few that escaped were scattered, directionless, afraid. For the first time, the invaders were not just losing, they were retreating. All across the world, sonar buoys lit up with signs of Thalzor vessels fleeing toward shallower water, leaving behind their structures and fallen dead. And as the pressure eased, so did the sea. The abyss grew calm once more. But everyone in Leviathan Division knew the war wasn't over. The aliens still had one ship too large to fall, an enormous command vessel hiding in the mid-Atlantic ridge, preparing something dangerous, something that could still turn the tide. Yet now, for the first time, humanity had the upper hand. They had survived not just through strength, but by understanding the one thing the Thalzor never could, that Earth's oceans were not a prize to be taken. They were alive. They had memory. And they had chosen their side. The pressure war had ended, but the final battle was still to come. Far beneath the mid-Atlantic ridge, in a place where the Earth's crust cracked open like an ancient wound, the last and largest Thalzor command ship waited, hidden among volcanic ridges and superheated vents. It pulsed with a cold blue glow, covered in living armor and surrounded by strange orbs that spun slowly like eyes, watching everything. This was their last fortress, their source of power, and the heart of their invasion plan. The vessel was not just a ship, it was a birthing chamber, designed to release thousands of spores that could spread across the oceans and turn the water itself into a living hive. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Sable, staring at the map projected before her. This final battle would not be like the others. It would be deeper, darker, and more dangerous than anything her team had faced. The sea around them groaned with tension, as if it too knew what was coming. The Abyssal King had retreated to the edge of the trench, its energy low after the last battle, but it had not abandoned them. It had left behind something, a glowing fragment of its body, small and pulsing with unknown power. Dr. Unikale believed it was a gift, a key, or perhaps a weapon. They called it the Heart of the Deep. When held close, it amplified sonar and sent shockwaves that confused alien machines. Voss took it with her as she led the strike team into the final dive. The water grew colder and heavier as they descended. At this depth, even sound moved strangely. Every whisper became a roar, and silence felt like a scream. As they approached the enemy fortress, alien sentries appeared, drifting in slow patterns, scanning for life. But Leviathan Division was ready. Using silent codes, decoy drones, and blackout subs, they crept forward like ghosts. Then came the signal, the beginning. Voss activated the Heart of the Deep, and it pulsed with a wave that made the water shimmer. The Thalzor sensors flickered, and for one precious moment, the enemy was blind. Human subs surged forward, releasing torpedoes and pulse charges that tore open the outer layer of the command vessel. The aliens responded fast. Beams of bioluminescent energy shot through the darkness, striking two human subs and sending them spinning into the ridge. But the team kept moving. Voss's sub, coated in adaptive camouflage, slid into the breach and entered the belly of the ship. Inside, it was like a nightmare, walls of living tissue, alien symbols glowing, strange fluids drifting in zero gravity. At the core of it all was the birthing chamber, protected by a swirling barrier of energy. Voss placed the Heart of the Deep into the sub's main console, and it reacted immediately. The glowing orb melted into the machine, sending a new pulse through the water, a low, deep tone that made the entire ship tremble. Outside, the Abyssal King stirred. Though weakened, it rose once more, drawn by the call of its own essence. From the dark, It came not as a monster, but as a judge. Its enormous body coiled around the enemy ship, and with a sound that shook the trench walls, it squeezed. The Thalzor command ship cracked, its walls folding inward. The birthing process was stopped. Inside, the lights dimmed and the alien defenses fell silent. Voss and her team escaped just in time, racing away as the sea collapsed around the fortress. Explosions of heat and pressure followed them, but they made it out, reaching the edge of the trench where Allied submarines waited. The battle was over. The Thalzor had been defeated not just by weapons, but by a force they could never understand, the will of the ocean itself. Days later, silence returned to the seas. No more alien signals. No more disappearances. The ocean began to heal, slowly reclaiming what had been disturbed. Leviathan Division remained hidden, their mission not yet finished. There would always be threats, always be shadows, but now they knew they were not alone down there. As Captain Voss stood on the deck of a surface ship, watching the waves rise and fall like a sleeping giant's breath, she understood something deeper than victory. The ocean had chosen to fight. It had tested humanity and found them worthy, not perfect, but willing to protect. Earth's depths had been claimed not by aliens, not by invaders, but by the bond between human courage and nature's ancient power. And beneath those endless waves, in the silence of the trench, something still watched, still listened, and still waited for the next time it would need to rise.